When is a win not a win? Perhaps in Venezuelan presidential politics. Although the main opposition party, led by Maria Corina Machado, claimed it won more than 70% of the votes in the election there, the election council declared President Nicolas Maduro the winner. He'll now start a third six-year term. Venezuelans showed their displeasure by taking to the streets and rioting in Caracas. Well, joining us with more is Juan Pablo Villasmil. He's from a Venezuelan immigrant family. He's a Young Voices commentator and writer for The Spectator magazine. Juan, it's good to talk with you again. So did Maria Corina Machado and her party actually win the vote? She says she has evidence they won more than 70% of the ballots.
They definitely did. As someone who grew up in Venezuela for the first 16 years of my life, Chavismo has slowly but surely died off. The votes that were announced by the Electoral Commission, which, by the way, is headed by a person who was a deputy from Maduro's party, Elvis Amoroso, just make absolutely no sense. They're starkly false. We're not talking about, like, let's say in the U.S., like, oh, maybe there was fraud in one state or two states. Every single state was drastically wrong. The three biggest polls, most respected polls in Venezuela, showed that the opposition candidate, who's Mundo Gonzalez, who's basically the replacement of Maria Corina Machado, which the regime didn't let her run, and they were trying to jail half of her team. They're now in the Argentinian embassy in Caracas, actually.
Let's talk about that, because I know Venezuelans are upset. They've taken to the streets. What is life like for them under Maduro? They don't want it anymore.
No, they don't. And what's really funny when I talk to some of like the college Marxist crowd is that they tend to see, and people like me, they go like, you don't speak for Venezuela because you're white, or you don't speak for Venezuela because you're rich and you live in Miami. So they have this image, and they have the same with Cubans, that we don't know what we're talking about. But when you look at the videos, there's a Chavizification process being led by the poorest of the poor in Venezuela. They've been shoved through their throats this Chavismo and this mythical, quasi-religious admiration of this socialist figure. And more than 20 statues of the socialist leader have been torn down. And when you look at the videos, go Google it. When you look at the videos, the people that are doing this are not doing it in like the pretty side of town. This is in the ugly neighborhoods. This is in the barrios, in the slums. The people, the Venezuelan people, are tired. They're fed up. And that's why Nicolas Maduro, there's no way he won. He lied, and not by like a few thousands, by millions and millions of votes. It's impossible, mathematically impossible, that he won.
Well, how does this affect the United States then, and how should the Biden administration respond?
Well, I don't even know how to talk to the Biden administration. They've been extremely incompetent in regard to Venezuela. They have the worst Venezuela policy imaginable. If I can go back for a little, Biden removed the sanctions on their oil sector if they promised to democratize. And then repeatedly, they didn't democratize. They tried to jail their opposition. And of course, they did all the things that they always do. And then they threatened to annex Guyana. And then they weaponized migration. And they do all these things. And Biden didn't put the sanctions back. There was no pressure, only concessions. And I'm not against negotiating. But if you're going to negotiate with Maduro, please know who you're negotiating with. It seems like Biden doesn't, or well, his handlers don't. And very concretely, Venezuela affects U.S. national interest, because you know who cares about Venezuela? China, Russia, and Iran. Actually, the country that has the highest level of strategic partnership with China in the Western Hemisphere is Venezuela. Venezuela is the biggest ally of China, the biggest ally of Russia. That's why Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping were super fast in congratulating Maduro. They were actually faster than Lula da Silva and AMLO and a lot of other Latin Americans. They were super, super fast. Why? Well, I know why. It's because the largest military presence Russia has is the Cuban Missile Crisis is in La Orchila Island in Venezuela. And it's because Venezuela has $2 trillion worth of critical minerals. And you know who wants those minerals? China.
Concerning the U.S. presidential election, you recently wrote that it's time for the Republicans to go negative No more Mr. Nice Guy. Why do you suggest they do that? Why?
In my opinion, Republicans need to decrease the public display of optimism. They need to stop talking about how we're leading in all the polls. Voters need to fear a Kamala presidency. And as a strategist, I would say this has to be properly illustrated. The left is talking about Project 2025, the spooky Project 2025. Well, we Republicans should be doing the same. We don't have a name yet. We don't have a monster yet. But if I were a strategist, I would create that monster. I would connect Kamala Harris with all the other